We're just having our team meeting, right? We're once a month, we reflect on, we reflect on the past month, like what worked, what didn't work, what did we learn about our access needs, how are they met, how are they not met, like all of that stuff. So like, what has been the impact of reflecting on your access needs?
I think that having the um, template to fill out at the end of each month, it really helps me just slow down and remember that I do have access needs and just spend some time and think about how the month went. It's been really helpful for me just to have that rhythm of here comes the template and now it's time to really look back and think what worked for my brain, what didn't work for my brain, what did I like, what didn't I like. So it's just been a really kind of like a new process for me. And I really like having the template laid out that helps me organize my thoughts and helps me get everything down.
So this is our template. We've got our roles. We've got our what worked well, what's not working, number one priority, not priorities, but priority singular. How will you know this month will be successful? Um, and then, like really, I mean, everything's talking about access needs, but this concept of being, I was just checking that like I actually shared screen because I don't see the little green thing. Anyway, you're seeing this, right? Okay, great. Okay. Anyway, like structured reflection on like meta access needs. And so, when some people type in ahead of time to have like processing time. Some people, like the way I do this sometimes is I like leave it open while I'm doing other stuff. And then I like, oh yeah, that's not working. And I write it down. So like just I think part of universal design for employment is giving lots of options to do everything.
Yeah, I think having it scheduled and as something that you routinely do at the end of the month, like forces you to slow down and think about this stuff. Cause I think it is so easy to just like get into the grind of all the things that need to happen. And it's sometimes difficult to like slow down and zoom out and really reflect and try to learn from like what worked or didn't work and what you can do differently moving forward. So yeah, I think it's a great practice to have together. And it also teaches us a lot about each other and like, oh yeah, this was hard for this person and like now I have that information and I can support them in this way maybe because I've learned that this is important for them or what works or doesn't work for everyone else on the team.
Love that, right? Because like, so we have this practice of we have this dedicated like retrospective look at the month and we discipline ourselves to not be problem solving or like planning during that. We're just going backwards and documenting. But then right after that, we shifted to a like forward thinking meeting where we planned stuff based on what we learned at the retrospective look and like based on like, okay, now we learned that this is an access need for one of our team members. Like, how are we going to do things differently to make that happen?
Yeah, I think that's I'll say that similar to what everyone else said. It's definitely first of all is remembering to do it is an access need to like reflect, having the time to do it, allow, which is huge. Like having time in our week to take time to do that is a huge gift, you know, especially in the workplace. Like who's ever had that experience before? Where you have time to self-reflect and think about what's working for you, what's not working for you, and then brainstorm with the team on how we can make it better or change it. Yeah.
Right. Like I like thanks for naming that, right? Because I think we should name that for Brain Club attendees. Like we're doing this as our meeting. It's not like extra.
Mhm.
It is the meeting. So it's also multimodal. So you can type into a Google document template ahead of time if you want. You can use mouth words. You can type in the chat synchronously if you want. And it's like just allowing people to express their truths in whatever way is accessible in that moment. And that requires the system to remain flexible. You know, there are some real downsides in using some of the, you know, the tech systems or like the things that are in our technology stack. Like there are some downsides that require a lot of like manual brain power to do the thing, but those choices are made in order to preserve flexibility. And I think that's another like small thing, big impact that makes a big difference, because we need to allow for everyone to do the thing in their own way and to be empowered to make little changes. And if you have a system that confines you, that dictates how you do your work, that sucks. It sucks to be like, you know, and I mean, this, you know, in the traditional healthcare system, where, you know, here's the electronic health record and you will use this one, and this is how it is. And, you know, a practice is paying like $100,000 for it. And like, there's a lot of investment in making that thing work, even though it doesn't work for you. And so I think that's another like important thing, is just like when building systems, you know, for anyone who's like in a place of, you know, influence, or, you know, when you're making decisions about some things that you have agency over, making decisions about, like, how do I maximize flexibility? Otherwise, that's like the prerequisite that allows someone to do the things that we've talked about, like the little tweaks, the little experiments. I'll try it this way, and if it doesn't work, I can tweak it again. Like just the constant tweaking.
Yeah, I love the flexibility of the template. Sometimes I fill it out like, you know, I sit there and I do it right when it comes in on a Friday. Sometimes I'm working on something else and I fill it out back and forth. This morning I filled it out after looking at other people on the team's entries, and then that sparked some ideas for me. So yeah, I have the novelty plus the sameness access need for myself. So I like to change it up, but I also like the consistency of the template.
I have an access need for sameness and novelty at the exact same time. And so like that's my truth. And so I have to figure out how I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a system, and that system is going to have to change. One of the things that happened this morning was I was on the phone with Sierra, and we were talking about something, and we realized that we forgot to make the group, like it's our job that on the first weekend of the month we make our, you know, our part of our medical schedule, and we didn't do it. And Lizzie needs it. I don't even really know if you need it tomorrow. Like you probably don't need it tomorrow, but like we were supposed to follow the system, and we didn't. Our access needs weren't supported because we can't just remember. Like that's like a neuronormative construct that I can just remember things that are important. If I could just remember things that are important, like I don't even know, because I don't even know. Right. So we need a visual support, and we need the visual support to not be in a place that is cluttered and overstimulating. It needs to be at a place where we look. It probably needs to be on a calendar. There needs to be some sort of like checklist, task analysis of like what goes on. And it needs to be in a place that we look, not a place like we have a lot of documents in this place, but you know, they're not necessarily in places where we look. So we didn't do the thing. And we didn't do the thing, and we don't feel bad about ourselves because we didn't do the thing. We're like, we didn't do the thing because our access needs were not met. Okay. So now this thing has to be done right before our meeting, because that's when it's supposed to be done by. So we took 15 minutes and we like banged out the schedule, and the schedule is good and it's clean and it's neat. And it was like, this usually takes us a really long time, and we did it in 15 minutes. And we realized that this actually works better for us. To like have the urgency of like, you will get the thing done and you will get the thing done now. And we just got a bunch of dopamine, and we focused, and we like, and we didn't, we weren't exhausted afterwards. We weren't exhausted at all. Whereas if we took like our usual time, which is 2 hours to do this task, like we feel terrible afterwards, but because we don't have stamina for that. And so as time goes by, we start losing. It's like your child, Sarah, not being able to plan going on a picnic by the time I got to like letter 25, you know. Anyway, so that. little tweak. Like now we're gonna actually plan to do the thing last minute, kind of like Lizzie and I, we plan to do the Brain Club slides. Like, well, Lizzie does them in advance, but then I do my part like as Brain Club starting, because that's my access need.
Often people will ask you for feedback or for what's working and what's not working, right? And then it just disappears into the vault of all, you know, concerns and things that are not working, but we actually want to do something about it.
Ooh, I love that point, right? So it's like, of all the times that I've given feedback in my life, especially when there's a power dynamic and like my feedback like goes into the abyss and I never hear from it again, right? Like, is that, did someone not care about me? Or did someone have executive functioning differences that they were
Right.
unaware of, right? Like, so that nobody's aware of, nobody talks about these things, right? So the reason that I think the reason that we actually do the things that make like forward incremental progress of our own access needs is that it's like very meta, like we are supporting our access needs with systems to support our access needs. So like we have this Google document and we type into it while people are reflecting, we like are also like collecting action items, and then like we put the action items in a new place where we're actually looking at them every week. And we're actually checking them off, and then we have this like ritual where we're preparing the new document at the end before the next retrospective meeting, and we're like, did we do the things? Oh my gosh, we did all the things. Look at that, because we looked at it every week. We like remembered, and this like I think we have over the past couple of months, I think we've recognized that we both need, or not we both, because we're a lot of people, we're 6 people, right? So we need both visual supports to do anything, and we are also visually overstimulated. Both of those things are our truths, and we have to figure out how to navigate that.
Yeah.
This concept of like small changes, big impact, like what just came up this morning in our retro meeting, was the fact that like people are drained by talking, and we, for like 15 minutes, we just stopped talking. We had like a lot of interaction in the chat, but like nobody talking. It's one thing when like when someone's facilitating with mouth words and then the participants are in the chat, like that's cool. But what if the facilitator is drained by talking? Like, what do you do with that? And that's like, I don't know, I've never sat in a group of team members and not tried to, it's like the over-rehearsed neural pathway of talking all the time, even while knowing that talking drains my battery.
Yeah, and it was cool that it was like real time. So again, like the whole meta thing, like we're talking about, what drains your battery, and then it's like, oh, well, lots of verbal communication, speaking, mouth words sometimes can drain your battery, and it's like, well, then let's just not talk and just start using the chat, and so that kind of like real time responsiveness to like, well, let's just try doing the thing right now, I think that's pretty cool.
I also think it's been helpful for people to talk about their own experiments. So we have like team experiments and we have like solo experiments. So like Lizzie talking about, I think like last month or the month before, like I'm blocking out my schedule, that this is when I do these types of tasks as a block. And then today, Sarah, you were like, I think, last month I started blocking out my schedule, and now I can work on kid connections, and I'm getting dopamine from doing this because it's really rewarding to find kids and teens make friends, and this is great. And anyways, and then like, so then Sierra was like, maybe I'll block out time because I really want to do this task that takes dedicated brain space to do. And I don't know necessarily that, in a world where even when folks have access to an idea, that doesn't mean they have access to implementation. That's like that's like another step of the motor plan. So like, I might know that like this thing is draining my battery, but like, I also can't like, for example, my battery is so drained by the state of affairs that is my desk right now, but I do not have spoons to do anything about it. And yet if like someone else had been like, I was really struggling with my desk and like I did this thing and it was helpful for me, like, and that thing was actually something relatable as opposed to like, yeah, you know, and then like fill in the blank, like something that doesn't apply to my brain and my life, you know, like, all right, that's good. I'm so glad that you have that, but that's not like, I'm not, I can't clean anything. It's, I can't.
Yeah, I think we do a lot of reflecting and learning from each other. And a lot of us have similar brains in terms of how we think about things. And so like strategies that may work or experiments that may work for one person, like may definitely work for somebody else, you know, and they're worth trying.
And I like how our meeting is like a reflectory meeting, that we save the brainstorming for another time. I think that's a really interesting component. And I loved when at the end today, when everything was in the chat, including your facilitation, Mel. I've never sat in a meeting like that, and it worked amazing, and it was just beautiful.
Yeah, and like, but it is interesting, like, I almost feel like I'm gonna take like a post-it note or an index card or something and like prop it up in front of me to remember, like, you know, use that chat, right? Because I've that thing an hour ago, I've never facilitated a meeting in the chat before. So I don't have any motor plan. I don't have any repetitions for it. So I'm always, as a dyspraxic person, I'm always going to gravitate toward my over-rehearsed neural pathways, which is to talk, even though it is the thing that is hardest for me. What do you remember about when you first started working here? Like, none of us have ever worked like, including myself, like, no, none of us have ever worked anywhere where like you did these things, that you talked about these things, that like access was the lens. So like, what's been that journey for you?
I think I'm definitely still unlearning that journey. Yeah, for sure. It's that those pathways are well worn. That, you know, you know, you got this, you can do it by yourself, you know, you'll figure it out, you know, and your needs won't be met, so why bother, you know?
It's you're aware of it now, but in the moment when something even harder is happening, it creeps back up. It creeps back up, and you're like, you know, and you're literally not aware. You're not matching the pattern, because matching the pattern is a cortex skill of like, there I go again, you know, doing my over rehearsed neural pathway where I torture myself. Like, I'm even trying like with safe people, including with patients. Like, if I'm doing a group medical appointment and I'm like feeling my like brain fog creep up, and I'm like that's what happens when when I don't have my access needs met, is that like I don't use energy appropriately, and you know, my mitochondria don't work and my blood flow doesn't work and all of it. So like, I'm modeling of like, yeah, I feel terrible, I need to be laying back, and like, now I'm laying back, right? And like, you should too, right? You know, yeah, I'm actually finding that I need to, you know, I need to shut the lights off. I need to change the temperature. I need to stop using mouth words and type in the chat. Like, I need to do this, and I'm gonna model that, because what would it be like to ever just live in a world where everyone just did that? And I don't know, it's not, there's things that we have agency over, you know, like when people talk, you know, Olivia, you brought up like this, my needs are not gonna get met, or, you know, somebody else talked about the system, you know, like there's so many things that we don't, you know, we, the collective, we like don't have, you know, the agency or autonomy or privilege to influence in this world. But maybe there is something that we do, like, you know, after I had COVID, Lizzie, you taught me the idea of like, I think you feel better when the lights are off. So now, like, when I get more brain fog or whatever, I'll remember Lizzie saying, "Oh, just turn the lights off." And like, I go and I get up and I turn the lights off, and it really does extend my battery life. It's little things, and like, fortunately, even in like other places where I've worked where I didn't have my access needs met, I don't think anyone would have prevented me from shutting the lights off. you know, like little things. No, well, maybe.
But yeah, we're so often taught to override our needs, right? All the time, actually, all the time. Yeah.
Yes. And it starts so young. It starts like, you know, it starts as in childhood, you know, like when you're taught there's one correct way to be in the world, you learn to override your needs.
Yeah, and I think just like at Brain Club, when people are coming and like learning new language to explain their experience, and then they're able to take that and maybe see things with a different lens and pull that information back into other parts of their life, you know, and go into situations with a different lens because of having a new narrative, self-narrative, kind of like about their experience. I think that's true working at All Brains Belong too. When you talk about, you know, how have things shifted since you started working with All Brains Belong, I think it's like, you know, just having a different, having new language, like changing the narrative and using that in other parts of my life. Cause you're right, Olivia, like the world isn't set up to like have your access needs met. And so like having that that lens like is like something that I've brought with me to other things in my life that I wouldn't have, that I didn't have before.
All right, I'm gonna share screen. So 2 years ago, we asked our community advisory board, how will we know that our community has become more neuro-inclusive? And I know I like use this slide a lot, but there we go. All right, so how will, you know, when we asked our community advisory board 2 years ago, how will we know that our community has become more neuro-inclusive? Like, I'm not even really sure that at this point that we necessarily talked about access needs in literally everything we do until this time. So we did this activity with the community advisory board. This is what we got back. And we're like, okay, this is the new compass. We are going to talk about access needs everywhere we go. And we are going to model what it looks like to shift your paradigm to be focused on access, right? So just anyway, the other day when we were at Montpelier Pride and people from our community came up to us, and I don't know if anybody else noticed this, but people were like spontaneously, casually, like no big deal, just like throwing it, like, oh yeah, well, you know, I learned about my, you know, and I was talking about my access needs at work, and I was like, yeah, I've been talking about my access needs with my mom, you know, they just like, it's happening, it's freaking happening. So that's really cool. That's really cool because it's free to shift your language and the way you, I don't know, like be around people doing the thing. That's like culture, right? Like it's culture is like just shared language, shared practices, shared whatever. And so, you know, if we all do it, it kind of catches on.
Yeah, and I think the idea of like doing micro things, like not like I think it can be overwhelming to be like, what are my access needs? Like, how do I like meet those? You know, it can feel like daunting. And so I think the idea, like the example you gave of like dimming your lights, it can be like 1% changes and those can add up. Like if there's enough areas of your life that you can just shift by like 1%, it can add up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because all those 1% or whatever percent a change you make is creating more space because your brain's not stressed out
Yeah. Or not stressed out as much.
as
You have a
much.
little
Right.
bit more capacity.
Right.
And I think
Right.
even like just even the lens shift of like, I have a finite capacity because I'm a human being, right? And the capacity I have now as a person with chronic illness is different than the capacity I had before. And certainly different than before I became a parent or before a head injury or like all the things, right? And so I have a finite capacity, and that capacity is different than the capacity of like the me of yesteryear. And what does that mean about my needs? What does that mean for like the little things that need to happen to have more space?
Yeah, totally. It's fluid over several years. It's fluid over like situations in your life. It's fluid like morning to afternoon. Like just knowing that it's fluid, I think is a really helpful lens. And it's a big shift from being like, well, I always need this for my access need, and that's what I always need. It's like, well, some days I need that, some days I don't, it depends.
Fluctuating capacity is the norm. And no one tells you that. No one tells you that. Like if someone had taught me that as a young child, that there would be times where I could do the thing and
Right.
times where I could not do the thing, like the impact on self-concept, self-efficacy, it'd be huge.
Right, because we not only like don't share that information with children, but we actively do the opposite. So we're like, you could tie your shoes yesterday. Why can't you tie your shoes today? Like, just do the thing. And
Do the
so
thing.
we drive home that point that like, if you could do it yesterday, why can't you do it today? And it's a huge paradigm shift to be like, well, fluctuating capacity is a real thing for children and adults.
Yes. And so whether, explicitly or implicitly, when you get the message that, you did it yesterday, you should be able to do the thing. If you can't, that reflects that you are lazy, that you don't care, that you're this, that you're that, like all of it. And whether you like it, even if it's implied or just even, if there's not like a truth shared to explain that, the sweet little love makes up a story. And the story is, I'm lazy, I'm this, I'm incompetent. And then like the imposter syndrome, like they're going to find out that actually I'm incompetent and I can't really do the thing consistently, just all of that.
As we do
Right,
it simultaneously.
Yes.
right. And the narrative is like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I do the thing? So I think it's like we're changing generations by having these conversations, right? Because like we're talking about it, and then our children are going to benefit from these conversations, and hopefully their children will benefit that much more, like just by talking about these things.
The best thing, so maybe we can edit this out if you don't want to talk about the story, Sarah, but last night Sarah and I were out with our children, with our families, and we were playing the I'm going on a picnic game. And as not only did cognitive load increase because you're like, later on in the rounds you have like more, I'm going on a picnic, I'm going to bring an apple and a banana, that game, for the whole alphabet. Not only does the task get harder, but now I've been doing the task for longer. So I'm draining my battery. It's also getting later. I'm also like, I've gone longer without food and drink, like you could just see the resources, the capacity just dwindle. And so what did we do? We just started like, we didn't actually name, I'm gonna help you now because you need help. We just started like scaffolding the experience. It was like, we just started doing gestures for like charade cues, or we started like naming the letter that came next, or we made a joke about the thing, or we just started doing it. And your sweet little love finished the game, and I think felt genuinely good about himself afterwards.
Yeah, totally. He was proud. And I think, that is like something that we talk a lot about in our family is like, that's part of his vocabulary is the word scaffolding at 9 years old. Like he uses that all the time. He's like, I can do this, but I'm going to need some scaffolding, And I just like, I love that. Like, I love that it's just like normalized. It's like, yep, I'm going to need your support. I'm going to need to body double. I'm going to need somebody with me. I'm going to need you to remind me, whatever it is. And there's no shame in it. It's just like, yeah, I can see that your capacity is dwindling. So I'm going to step in and help support you so that you can get to the end. Cause I know you really want to get to the end. So let's help you get there.